Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most powerful ideas in feminist thought. It's a phrase you've probably heard thrown around: the personal is political. We're going to unpack what that really means, how our most private, everyday lives are actually connected to the huge forces that run our society. Okay, let's get into it.
So, let me start by asking you something. When you think about your big life decisions, your career, who you love, how you manage your home, how much of that do you think is 100% your choice? By the end of this, you're going to have a whole new lens to see those choices through.
So this idea comes from a famous slogan from the 1960s, and the point is pretty radical. It says that the stuff we think of as personal, family drama, relationship issues, career stress, isn't happening in a vacuum. It's all deeply tangled up with bigger things like laws, the economy, and society's unwritten rules.
All right, so for our first section, let's break down what this connection actually looks like in the real world.
The key takeaway here is that none of us is making decisions in a bubble. I mean, think about it. The laws in your country about who you can marry or what you can do with your own body directly impact your personal life. The job market might push you into a career you didn't expect. And what about that subtle or not so subtle social pressure to hit certain life milestones by a certain age? That's not just background noise. These are powerful currents shaping your choices.
Okay, so if these forces are out there, what's the system behind them? Well, that brings us to a huge concept we need to unpack to understand this connection: patriarchy.
Now, this is a really, really important distinction to make. Patriarchy is not about blaming individual men, not at all. Think of it more like a society's operating system, one that's been running for a very, very long time. It's a structure where, historically, power in government, in business, in the community has been concentrated in the hands of men. We're looking at the system itself, not the people in it.
So how does this system work? A key way is by splitting our world into two spheres. You have the public sphere, that's work, politics, the economy. This has traditionally been seen as a man's world, and it's where we measure value in dollars and cents. Then you have the private sphere, that's the home, family, all the caregiving. This was seen as a woman's domain, and the work done here, it's often been unpaid, uncounted, and basically invisible to the formal economy.
And this split has massive, real-world consequences. It restricts women's paths to leadership and financial independence. It creates what's called the double burden, where women are often expected to crush it at their jobs and then come home to a second, unpaid job of running the household. And at its core, it just flat out devalues the essential work of raising children and caring for family, which, let's be honest, is the work that allows everything else to function.
But that leads to a really critical question, right? If this system is in place, does it mean that every single woman experiences it in the exact same way? As you can probably guess, the answer is a big, resounding no.
And that's what we're going to dig into now. We're going to see how different parts of a person's identity, like gender, caste, and class, all crash into each other to create wildly different realities.
Okay, so let's build this idea piece by piece. At the most basic level, a woman is navigating the system of patriarchy we've been talking about.
But now let's say that woman is also a Dalit woman in India. Suddenly, she's not just dealing with one system, she's facing the combined weight of patriarchy and the deep-rooted discrimination of casteism. Now let's add one more layer. Imagine that same woman is also from a lower-class background. Now look at what she's up against. It's a triple threat: gender, caste, and class. And these systems don't just add up one by one. They intersect and amplify each other, creating a unique and incredibly intense form of oppression.
And there is a name for this crucial concept: intersectionality. It's the idea that you can't understand someone's experience by just looking at one part of their identity in isolation. You have to see how all the different pieces, gender, race, class, religion, you name it, overlap and interact to create their unique reality.
The historian Uma Chakravarti's work is fantastic on this. She basically argues that in a society like India, you can't even begin to separate caste from gender. They're completely woven together. And it's this tangled web that shapes the specific and often very oppressive experiences of women, especially Dalit women.
So when you start to see these complex systems, it forces you to completely rethink what we even mean when we talk about things like progress or a developed society.
Traditionally when we talk about a country developing, we almost always look at economic numbers. We talk about GDP, industrial growth, how much money the average person makes. It's a very straightforward, numbers-focused way of looking at progress.
But take a look at this.
This chart really shows the feminist critique of that whole model. If you look at all the work that actually keeps society going, the formal economy that GDP measures is just a tiny slice. A huge chunk is the informal economy. And look at that biggest slice. That's all the unpaid care and domestic work. It's the hidden engine that powers everything else, and it's completely left out of the traditional numbers.
So the critique is pretty clear. Mainstream development is basically blind to the enormous economic value of the work that women disproportionately do for free. It also tends to treat women as passive people who need to be helped instead of as powerful agents of change in their own communities. And it's based on this faulty idea that if you just make the economy bigger, gender equality will magically sort itself out. It just doesn't work like that.
Okay, so how do we tie all this together? In this last section, let's go over the tools this perspective gives us to really see the world more clearly.
So here are 3 powerful tools you can take away from all this. First, always try to connect the dots between your personal life and the political systems around you. Second, always recognize intersecting identities. Remember that people's experiences are complex and layered. And third, always question the idea of progress. Ask yourself, progress for who? And whose work is being made invisible to achieve it?
Because ultimately, what this all shows us is that real personal empowerment isn't just about individual success or leaning in. It's completely inseparable from the bigger collective work of challenging the very systems that try to define our lives for us.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. Now that you have these new tools for seeing the hidden architecture of our world, what parts of your own personal life look different? What connections can you suddenly see that were maybe invisible before?